Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and this is To Back or Not to Back. It's been like 4 weeks or 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's been way too long since we did one of these, and that's because late December generally has a very, very light crowdfunding schedule. To the point, to the extent is the word I'm looking for, that even this week's episode is going to be very light. I'm guessing 15-20 minutes. It's going to be pretty short. There's only a handful of campaigns that really stand out. We have 10-15 campaigns to go over, well, less than 10-15. We have like 10 campaigns to go over. Many of them are very much on the smaller side, and I won't be going into a lot of detail on some of those. We'll be briefly talking about them, showing what's out there, but not going into quite as much detail on the smaller campaigns, which really leaves only a few bigger ones to focus on. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and start this off. Next week might be larger, or it might be like 2 weeks before. I don't know for sure. Although next week we'll have some big ones, so we'll figure it out. But with that said, let's go ahead and dive into it. Starting off a little differently than usual. Usually I start off with, you know, the cult of the now, and then I follow that up with the campaigns not funding, and I do all that. But I'm going to go a little out of order this week, because I always do when the Dice Tower has their Kickstarter, because the Dice Tower currently has their crowdfunding campaign. This is the first thing I'm going to be talking about, just to make sure you catch it in case you missed it. But in general, I have been talking about the Dice Tower for a long time. I have been watching the Dice Tower for, I want to say, since I got into the hobby in 2011, 2012. So for 12 years now, I've been watching the Dice Tower. I've been using them to make decisions around the games I back. I've followed their evolution of their content and the production quality they bring to the table, and the types of content that they do, and the amount of live content they do, and the different shifts from Tom standing in front of his shelves way back in the day to the studios with the multiple opinions and everything else going on right now. The Dice Tower has been in the hobby for a very, very, very long time, has been influential in the hobby to no end for a very, very long time, and is hands down the dominant voice in the board game content creator scene. Make no mistake, there's a ton of other people out there who do a lot of content that add a lot of value to space, but if you're looking for a single place that covers nearly everything with a variety of voices, and does their best job of just making sure you have the information you need as a gamer to be able to get the games you want, back the games you want, not just back, retail copies, whatever it is, the Dice Tower has been giving you all the information you need for a very long time. They are running their once-a-year crowdfunding campaign, which they do once a year. They always do it at the beginning of the year, and they currently already funded. They crossed their $240,000 goal. They're now moving into the stretch goals, which include a whole bunch of things, including the van or whatnot. There's 4,000 backers. If in any way, this is a campaign I've been backing every single year for the past few years, and they have a pledge, which I don't know if it's new or not, but it's the first time Tom really talked about it or pointed it out, at least to the best of my knowledge. But there's two reasons to back the Dice Tower crowdfunding campaign. The first is in general to, you know, get various goodies and promo packs and all these different things, anything from dice people to, you know, various dinners or options with the Dice Tower crew at various conventions, to buying promo packs. Those are all valid options. They're great ways to back the campaign. They're great way to support the Dice Tower. But then past that, there's also the $60, the best way to support us level. That works out to $5 a month. And the point of this is that when you sit there and you buy a $50, $60 promo pack, it does support the Dice Tower. It's very helpful. But there's also logistics involved, and there's costs involved, and there's all these other things. And so the Dice Tower doesn't get your full $60. And so if you want the promo pack, great. You should get it. It is a great win-win. I'm not saying don't do it. But there's also a $60 pledge level, which roughly just shy of 10% of people have backed at that level, and I think I'm probably backing at that level this year. In the past years, I've backed to get a dice person. I thought that'd be cool. I backed at one point to get somebody else. I gifted it somebody else to be on their trivia show. But I think this year is the year I'm going to be going with a general best way to support us pledge level, because I get the point of why it's there, and I appreciate the Dice Tower's content. I generally believe in supporting those who you get value from. Yes, that's also a shameless plug for me as well, but to be fair, I've been hyping the Dice Tower and talking about their Kickstarter for the past several years. I do this every year. I think they are a tremendously influential voice in the hobby, and on a personal note, they have been influential to me both as a gamer and as a content creator, and I value them. So yeah, that's your 4-minute spiel on the Dice Tower. But with that, let's go ahead and dive into the rest of the campaign, starting off the bat with our Cult of the Now. Cult of the Now is a reminder that yes, we go over a whole bunch of crowdfunding campaigns, but at the end of the day, they are very tempting, they're very appealing, they cost a lot of money, you get them in a year and a half, you don't even know if the reviews are good, but you can also get games now that are great. You can get games now that are well rated, you can get games now that cost significantly less than crowdfunding does. I think crowdfunding has a lot of perks. Some of the best games I have in my collection are from crowdfunding, but at the same time, there are amazing retail games out there, and right now over on Game Nerds, they have the Loop on sale for $27. The Loop is an incredible game that I've really been enjoying. It's like an 8+ on Board Game Geek, really rated well. It's a cooperative experience, plays well solo, plays well cooperatively. Well, I imagine it should play well cooperatively, that's what it is. but it is a game that to me has replaced Pandemic as my go-to cooperative, 60 to 90 minute long game or 45 to 75 minute long experience as you puzzle your way through different scenarios, choosing different characters and trying to figure out how to manipulate different aspects of the game. I really strongly enjoy the loop. And right now, for $27, you can get this game, you can watch 15 different reviews, and you can get it, again, you get it now, get it cheaper, and get it with a whole lot more vetted content behind the game to find out if it's a game for you or not. That's going to be our Cult of the Now, the loop from Game Nerds. Nope, not sponsored, any of that stuff. And with that, we'll move on to the not funding category. We only have one here currently. We have the Last Doge. Over on crowdfunding at the moment, this one is a centuries after the fall of a civilization, a few rare humans try to find a lost treasure in dried up Venice. You're going to be moving around the board over here, taking actions, looking at different tiles, and choosing where to, where to move your character based on what's behind the tiles, and then occasionally trying to find the lost treasure as you manage your different factions and try to figure out the abilities of them in the game. That's going to be the Last Doge over here. Currently not funding at, we have $14,000 of a $21,000 goal, 186 backers. It likely will fund just based on where we are, 24 days to go, and currently at 2/3 of the way through. Pledge levels over here are going to run you $33 for the Anezi pledge, and then $66 for the Doge pledge, as well as $109 for the all-in pledge here. So a bunch of ways to spend your money over here, whether you get standees, miniatures, upgrades, expansions, all of that stuff. But this is the Last Doge, currently not funding, likely will fund. Then from moving from there, we have OrcQuest, Warpath Resurrection. This is an interesting one coming to you from Monolith Games, who purchased this from their previous company. OrcQuest Warpath Resurrection was already on Kickstarter, already crowdfunded, and made its way mostly towards the end of everything they needed to do, but then ultimately the company ran out of funds. They didn't have what they needed to cross the finish line, and so they looked for somebody else to sell this game to, and Monolith picked up the game. This is all in the crowdfunding campaign. They talk about it all, but this is effectively a, hey, the game's ready to print, it's all ready to go, we're all done, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround time, but at the same time, we need to run this crowdfunding campaign to raise the additional $200,000 to fund both the people who backed this in this campaign, as well as previous backers, and to bring this over that finish line. And so Monolith is picking this up, and they are running it. If you are a previous backer of this game, you should not back this. If you are already backed this game, they already have your emails, you'll be contacting the pledge manager, they'll take care of all that, but for right now, if you already backed this game, there's nothing new here. What there is a single pledge level over here of €135, $147 for the Resurrection pledge that bundles everything together in 2 boxes, just keeps it simple, keeps it to the point, consolidates everything at a fairly good price compared to the original campaign, compared to what you can get this game for, giving you a ton of OrcQuest content in your game as you manage your orcs in this dungeon crawler campaign-driven cooperative board game, which you'll be managing your orcs, fighting various people, choosing your dice pools, rolling your dice, assigning blocking and defense as you go through this dungeon crawler game with tons of miniatures, tons of tiles and dice and all these things in 2 giant boxes full of an absolute ton of content over here. That's basically what's going on in OrcQuest. So a little bit of a resurrection story, which hence the name and all that, a little bit of a dungeon crawler, and a little bit of a, all-in-one single pledge just to keep it simple, and delivering fairly quickly because everything else is already done as far as the campaign goes. I do recommend watching the video, very entertaining, very to the point, so I do recommend watching that. Past that, as far as should you back it, should you not, currently at $147 for this game with the amount of content you get and keeping it at a consolidated all-in, I think this likely will hold its value. It's not a guarantee, not by a long shot, but I think this likely will hold its value overall. It's a gamble a bit to a degree. OrcQuest does have an original game, wasn't received that well. Depending on the changes on this one, I think the amount of content you're getting for the price point is great, but it does also depend on how good the game is. I imagine this is the kind of game that if you back it and get rid of it pretty quickly, you should be fine, but if it's a game that you back it, hold on to it for a while, and it's not rated that well, then it won't hold its value, so I would say it's probably fine, but also not a guarantee as far as OrcQuest Warpath Resurrection. From there we have Circadians First Light and Specialist Expansion. We have 1,000 backers, 3 days to go, $68,000 raised. This represents 2 expansions, the Specialist expansion to Circadians First Light, as well as the Harbingers expansion to Circadians Chaos Order. I don't know much about these actual expansions themselves. I haven't played the game. I do have one of the Circadian games behind me, Chaos Order I have behind me. I need to play it, but I haven't yet, so don't have any commentary there. But overall, 2 expansions to these games, adding new content to the game. As usual from a Garphill Games Kickstarter, or is it Garphill Games Kickstarter, this is going to be one where you're saving about 20% off MSRP, but once you factor in shipping, there's not a ton of savings there, which means generally these games are just as easy to get at retail. So if you want these games, you could back the Kickstarter, you can go ahead and support them over here, and the more money goes to the creator that way. But at the same time, if you want to wait for retail, they will be available and likely save you a few dollars as well, just because of the nature of shipping, and the 20% discount of MSRP is usually you'll see somewhere in that range anyway once you're backing at retail without the extra shipping going on over there. Then from there we have Green Planet, Powerline, and Future Energy. This is going to be some games from Queen Games. They regularly run their Kickstarters over here. 157 backers, 5 days to go, $14,000 raised. Powerline was actually just on GameFound as well, so this looks like they're again, and this is regularly common for Queen Games, where they'll run a campaign and they'll have like a ton of available previous games available. So they're focusing on Powerline and Future Energy as far as the games available over here, and then as well as that you can get Bastille and Fresco and Luxor and Old London Bridge and Runestones and Scrap Racer, a ton of games that you have access to over here as far as what you want to choose to pick and choose to add to your cart. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. There's a lot over here. I haven't played Powerline. I haven't played Clean Energy. Runestones is very solid. I think the expansions are worth picking up there as well. Old London Bridge is one that I've been wanting to try but haven't. Fresco I have not played in years. That was like one of my first games I played. Speaking of gaming since 2012, Fresco was one of the first games I got into when I first got into the hobby. But yeah, Queen Games puts out a lot of solid games, some that really stand out, some that are solid in different ways. But yeah, that's what we have as far as this campaign. Should you back it, should you not? Generally, these games are available at retail fairly easily. As far as backing on the Queen Games Kickstarters, it depends on the game. It depends on the campaigns they run. Like their Giant City collections give you a lot more exclusivity. These other ones, it's more a question of just general availability. You can get these games at retail usually after the fact fairly easily. From there we have Chesney. The power struggle in the Forest Kingdom, shifting factions and strategies determine your fate. Wounded players are not out of the game. 215 backers, $14,000 raised, 8 days to go. I don't have a ton of information on this one. I didn't get a good feel for what this game is. There's a degree of hidden role going on in the game. There's different factions going on. There's the wounded players not removed from the game. Overall, the video didn't really do a great job for me really strongly delivering what the game is. And so I just don't have a ton of information about how the game actually plays. I will say Before You Play does have a playthrough video, and I generally recommend their content. So if you are interested, I recommend checking that out. Past that, the game itself is going to run you around $39 for the standard game, $71 for the deluxe, and that's what you're going to get over there. The early birds are already gone. Should you back it, will it hold its value, all of that? I don't think it will. I'm skeptical this will hold its value. It just doesn't seem to be a ton of demand for it. 215 backers, and this can be true for a bunch of campaigns today that just don't have a ton of following behind them. Then we have Play, Rewind, Eject, a tabletop card game. 169 backers, $14,000 raised, 8 days to go. Play, Rewind, Eject is a game which you're going to be picking a bunch of movie cards and then putting them down in front of players, and one of those cards is going to be the movie that you're playing, the one that you want as is. One is going to be the movie that you're rewinding, that you want to make changes to the director, the actors, the plot, changing some of the aspect of the movie, and the Eject is going to be the one that you don't want at all. And then the other players around the table have to guess which one of those movies you selected. So it's not one of those apples to apples or dicks or any one of these comparison games where you kind of have a judge-like character and then other characters who are in some way guessing what the judge character did. Looks to be very much in the simple party game aspect, but if you are a movie buff, this might be your jam. That has a bunch of expansions as far as, 1980s, animated movies, comic movies, horror movies. General concept, I think if you're a movie buff, this is fun for you, but it's going to be likely a very light party game and likely one that there's a bunch of other options you can get your hands on that are, well, more deeper as far as the game experience they offer. Pledge levels are going to be anywhere from $25 for the core set up to all the way to $75 for the full all-in bundle for everything. As far as should you back it, will it hold its value? It likely won't. It won't be easily to get your hands on otherwise, which is going to apply to Chesney as well, by the way. Some of these games won't necessarily be easy to get your hands on, but I'm skeptical that this will hold its value after the fact. Not going to be a lot of demand for this type of game. Then we have Make 100 Dungeon Makers, 135 backers, $4,369 raised, 12 days to go. This is a 1 or 2 player game of making out your own dungeon. You're going to be making a 5x5 dungeon area. So think King Domino as far as what you're doing. You're going to be drafting tiles, you're going to be placing them down to build out your dungeon to try to score points based on different scoring objectives. That's basically what's going on here. It's either going to be a head-to-head 2-player game, or there's a solo mode as well that you can play, but you're just trying to build out the most efficiently scoring dungeon and be selected as the primary dungeon maker, thematically speaking. As far as the pledge levels over here, we have $27 for the full game over here, and that's basically all we have. That's all we have, $27 for the full game. It's basically one pledge, one simple to the point, all that. Should you back it, will it hold its value? Same as the previous ones. This is likely one that's going to be hard to get your hands on after the fact, but it's also one that is less likely to hold its value. Just the price point, plus the shipping, plus the lack of demand, is going to make this one that's hard to hold its value after the fact. Then we have Spell Wars, a fast-paced strategy card game. 682 backers, $34,000 raised, 17 days to go. Spell Wars is bringing you 8 schools of magic inspired by D&D in a fast-paced head-to-head card game. It's just basically card play. That's what it is. It's a fast-paced head-to-head card game. Pledge levels are going to be $25 for the Spell Wars card deck, up to $55 for the party set. Early bird's already gone over there. Same conversation, likely won't hold its value. 682 backers does mean that there's going to be a little bit more aftermarket demand, aftermarket availability, I should say, but it's still likely one that won't hold its value. Just the overall game, what it's offering, it's a head-to-head card game. Those are very simple, they're very common. It might be a great game, don't get me wrong, but this genre in general is, you can get it, it's not going to be one that necessarily holds its value after the fact. From there we move to Among Us, which I think is the last campaign we're talking about today. I mentioned already it's a short video. We're just crossing like the 18-minute mark currently, so we'll just barely cross 20 minutes. But Among Cultists, a social deduction thriller. 4 to 8 investigators try to prevent a secret ritual at the university, but beware, evil cultists are already among us. And that phrasing is intentional. It is based on the Among Us video game, so it's the same general premise as far as you're going to have different characters wandering around the board. It's adapting the video game to a board game in a very specific format, but you're going to have, this from Good Games, 2,000 backers, $156,000 raised, 18 days to go. But you're going to have a board, you're going to have characters, and characters are going to be wandering around to room across rounds. I think it's 10 rounds of play. And whenever you find yourself in a room with other players, you may find that the cultists among us might convert you or kill you or mess with you in some way, shape, or form, although other characters in the room will prevent that. So if you have 3 characters in a room, you're pretty safe. And so you're constantly trying to navigate around the rooms, making strategic choices, every player having their objectives as far as what they're going for, and so you have to try to communicate with other players. You have to be like, well, we should have 3 of us in the room to protect us, but I can't be the 3rd person in the room because I have to go do that. That might make you a little sus as far as, you know, I think you're the bad person. You're going to be negotiating and discussing with the other players as everyone tries to figure out what they're trying to do and tries to convince others when they're being a little suspicious, why or why not they have a good reason to be suspicious as a good player, because ultimately the good players want to eventually vote out the cultists. So everyone's trying to go and see, everyone's trying to follow their own goals and trying to survive as a good person and kill everyone as a bad person. And so you're going through that aspect. Again, inspired by Among Us. If you've played Among Us, this should all sound fairly familiar. There'll be events or things that happen, the lights go out, or different things will happen across the course of the game to keep it interesting. And then there'll be also an expansion that will add a ton of stuff. There can be roles for the characters to keep it interesting. The expansion is going to add more boards, go deep underground with an abandoned mine with elevators. Also comes with a profession module, or forget vacation feelings, row around the island but be afraid of tentacles lurking in the water. So you can have different expansions that add even more professions or more boards or changes to the state, as well as a free add-on that you're party in the game, that you can customize player boards and characters with pictures of your friends, which seems cool, I guess. Not necessarily my jam quite as much, but might be something you're interested in. That's basically what you have as far as Among Us. I do highly recommend watching the Kickstarter video. I think it does a great job of showing you the kind of feeling or impression you'll get from it. Overall, definitely recommend that. And then as far as pledge levels, we have $55 for the Investigator pledge, and then $102 for the Great All-In, which gives you the base game, the core game stretch goals, the Expansion 1, Expansion 2, the Expansion 1 and 2 stretch goals, the free add-on, all locked, basically everything as far as the add-on, the Great All-in-One pledge over there for $102. As far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? Good Games in general has, I would say, their games have done decently on Kickstarter. They have done fine as far as, if you look at the aftermarket, let's say the last one, Human Punishment, for example. If you look at the after sales on that one, there are definitely some copies that sold for below what people paid for it, but there are also copies that sold for at or above what people paid for it. I would put them in the, it's a reasonable back kind of conversation. If this is something that compels you or you're interested in, then by all means, check it out. And it's one that you can probably back with a degree of confidence that at least if you sell after the fact, whatever you do lose won't necessarily be a lot. And so, hey, you know, get a few plays in, see if it's for you, and it's one that, you know, getting it now versus retail, there are reasons to get it now as opposed to retail. And that's what we have over here. These are the games. As far as the picks of the week, in general, I do 2 picks of the week. I do a pick of the week of the game that I am most personally interested in, and then a game that I think is most likely to hold its value. For the value pick, I'm going to go with OrcQuest from Monolith Games. And this is one that I am not confident that it'll hold its value. I think there's a decent chance that this one holds its value compared to any other game over here. There is obviously the caveat that if it turns out to be not a great game, that will turn around and tank pretty quickly, or not tank, but it will not do as well. But I think as far as the games that I think are the best back from a value perspective, I think OrcQuest likely hits that category. On the other hand, as far as the personal interest pick of the week, I'm going to pick Among Us. Among Us is definitely Among Cultists, not Among Us. Among Cultists for me is definitely the one that I'm the most interested in, and I'm debating whether to back it or not. The only question I have is at 4 players minimum. It's been, again, our game group in general, our consistency, I would say 2 to 3 players has been very, very consistent and easy for me in my game group. Getting to 4+, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pre-pandemic, that was very, very easy. These days, it doesn't happen quite as often, and so the question is, do I want to spend $100 on a game that won't hit the table that frequently? But I'm definitely the most interested in this one. I know people played it. You can check out this, Play the Game has content on it. Play the Game HQ, you can check them out. I know Devon Talks Tabletop had a first impressions. Lots of content you can check out. Looks very compelling, very interesting. I just don't know ultimately if it'll get tabled personally by me or not. As far as games coming up next week, we have a few things. We have Once Upon a Line from from Pert and Fracas, but in association with Lucky Duck, with 6,300 followers currently on this game. I just did a review of the game on my channel. You can check that out, or more of first impressions. We also have Sleeve Kings over on GameFound. They're going to be announcing Sleeve Kings Season 4 is going to be launching on GameFound in a day or so, and this is one that I highly recommend in general. I've been recommending Sleeve Kings for years on my channel. They're the sleeves I use. I found them to be better quality than penny sleeves, and then they're cheaper and more, like, the thickness is not too thick compared to premium sleeves. Coming in at 60 microns, I think they're a great combination of quality and price point. They're what I sleeve my entire collection with. Highly recommend them. Not sponsored, not whatever, and they're always the cheapest way to get their sleeves are always in their crowdfunding campaigns. And then lastly, of course, we have Marvel United Multiverse launching this week on the 18th. Lots of content on the channel already for that. I have Quackle as a gameplay. I have a gameplay. I'll have a review. I also have a full Marvel United I have a full Marvel United Infinity Wars playthrough that will be on the channel this week as well. That's all content from Season 1, but in case you want to see a full 4 episodes back-to-back as we challenge through three Infinity War games, followed by an ultimate fight against Thanos, if you want to check that out, you can see that on the channel as well this week. And that is everything. That's what we have this week as far as, well, our 2 back and out to back. Like I said, it's a short week back. Next week we may or may not have a dedicated 2 back and out to back. It depends what goes up this week. Depends on how heavy everything is. But slowly we'll move back, and as crowdfunding campaigns continue to come back, we'll move back into the cycle of having these every single week. And at the very least, I'm sure I'll have something about Marvel United. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I appreciate all of you being here, and as always, I hope you have a good one. I tried to start a professional hide-and-seek league. I tried to start a professional hide-and-seek team, but the whole thing didn't really work out. It turns out good players are hard to find.